Hi all, it's been a while since I've posted. I think when I last posted, which was episode 4 of the series, I was in induction therapy, and that was back in December 2003. So I do apologise, but a lot has happened, and I thought we would just have a catch up, a general talk today about the experiences I've had in the last 18 months or so. Last time I spoke to you, I was preparing to go into the Christie to have stem cell transplants, stem cell therapy, which has all happened. And I'm not going to talk about that today because there's a couple of videos on the channel. If you want to know more about the stem cell process, please have a look at the channel and please have a look at them 2 videos I've done on there. They'll give you a lot more insight. My own personal journey is on there as well, so you can have a look at that. But I'd like to talk today more about the psychological effects, side effects of the cancer itself, and also the treatments, and in particular fatigue, depression, anxiety, meaning, giving meaning to life. You know, when we're under these difficult circumstances, when we're, our future may be in some way precarious. How do we give meaning to life? That's what I want to talk about today, because this is what's affected me more in the last 18 months. So I had my stem cell therapy in January 2024, but just before that I started to have some psychological side effects, and these were in the form of panic attacks. I went abroad in the January. I went to Finland and I started having panic attacks, which, being a therapist myself, I managed okay. But it's not nice. It's still difficult. It's uncomfortable. It's frustrating. I mentioned this to my consultant, and the consultant told me that the panic attacks were the product of the dexamethasone steroid. They were in the renown apparently for causing some psychological effects, including panic attacks. So when I stopped taking the dexamethasone, the panic attacks reduced. That was okay. I had my stem cell transplant in January 2024, which I said before, and this was the recovery, the transplant process went reasonably smoothly. I was out of hospital in quite a short time, a couple of weeks. I was in hospital. When I had the high dosage melphalan, it was difficult. I had lots of diarrhea, nausea, no vomiting but nausea. So, that was also a difficult period, a difficult few days. And you're waiting for what's called neutrophils, these white blood cells that fight that fight infection. They're basically all killed off, and when you're in hospital for your stem cell transplant, you're waiting for these to come back online, so that your immune system starts to grow back as a result of the stem cell process. And then basically you can go home, which I did. I went home, but I was so fatigued, and this is what I really would like to talk about today. How do we deal with the fatigue? Everybody I speak to with cancer, nearly everybody seems to suffer quite a lot with fatigue. And for me, this fatigue was so bad. I was going to bed, 9 o'clock at night. I was getting up 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't feel any more rested. I didn't feel any more awake. I just felt fatigued, sort of 24 hours a day. And over the months, this began to really take its toll. I started to lose interest in everything. I was so tired or so fatigued that my attention span was very, very low. And I had no interest, quite frankly, in anything. Every day became a challenge. And this gives rise to a very deep depression. Now, as a person who trains therapists for a living, my pride was somewhat dented when I started suffering from depression, but I did recognise it. At the time, it seemed to be depression that was related directly to the cancer-related fatigue, and there wasn't an awful lot I could do about it. Um, the fatigue seems to be persistent, giving rise to this depression, and quite frankly, I went to some really dark places. Um, I, I, I almost lost the will to live, quite frankly, which is not like me. I'm the exact opposite. I've thrived in life. I've loved life. Life has been a big adventure to me, and it's been like a grieving process. Grief is really all about loss, and it's not just about losing a person, bereavements. Grief is about loss of our whole life, the way we used to be, loss of perhaps employment, loss of finances, loss of relationships, even loss of the sense of self, that old self that was out there doing all of these things. And this led to a deep, deep depression with me. Also, anxiety. Anxiety is closely linked, as we all know, to depression. So I was getting anxiety. I was worrying about things that were really small and making mountains out of molehills. This was all happening inside of me as a result of the cancer-related fatigue. And at the time, I'm going to be very, very honest with you today, I couldn't see an end to it. I was getting up each morning and I just wanted the night time to come so I could go back to bed and go back to sleep. I hated the daylight coming up in the morning because I knew another day, I was faced with another day of this deep despair. The mornings were particularly bad because that was when I would really feel that deep, deep depression. And the anxiety come with the thought of a new day. Quite frankly, it was horrible. But, we have to find ways to deal with these things. And I spoke to other people, and I noticed with fatigue, one of the big things, fatigue, was exercise. But quite frankly, again, I was going out exercising, I was swimming, I was doing some walking, but I just felt so tired. There was no enjoyment in it whatsoever. I was also at this point still getting a lot of nausea as well, which didn't help of a morning. Eventually the nausea did subside. It took months, by the way, before it did subside. Quite a lot of months, 8 or 9 months perhaps, before it subsided. But it did go. And I found that if I got up of a morning with nausea, although you may not feel like eating, please do eat. Because I found that eating, putting something on your stomach, actually helps with the nausea. So I did that. My doctor did put me on antidepressants, different antidepressants, the last one being sertraline or sertraline. And quite frankly, again, for me, they didn't help. Now, I'm not decrying antidepressants. Because I know it's been a miracle cure, quite frankly, for a lot of people out there. So if you're taking antidepressants, this is not an antidepressant broadcast, so to speak. But for me, I come off them, and I come off them in the wrong way. I was admitted back into hospital. My blood went slightly haywire, irregular. I was taken back into hospital. I was very, very down and very depressed, and I went on to antidepressants. To cut a long story short, I went worse. The depression got worse. The lack of meaning in life. What's life all about? This precarious outlook, and I wasn't really. I was trying to live in the day, but I wasn't. This dark cloud had really come down, and I had to find ways of dealing with it. And my first thing was to give up the antidepressants. Now, I stopped them suddenly, which I don't advise anybody to do. You're not supposed to stop them suddenly. Please refer to your doctor of how to come off antidepressants. If that's what you need, you may need to go on them. Lots of people find them extremely helpful. I went through sweats and shakes for a couple of weeks when I come off them, and things got worse. Again, my outlook was bleak. I didn't see any point in life. I wasn't able to do the things I used to do. I was able to do things, but there was no enjoyment. And I mean, my last refuge was always the television, a good film to escape into. My concentration just wouldn't take a film in. I couldn't read a book. Anyway, I come off the antidepressants, and about 2 weeks after coming off the antidepressants and having these shakes and having these sweats and whatever, that flicker of light within my consciousness come back. Just a brief flicker of hope. And I thought, I've got to help this. I've got to expand this. So what I done is that morning I got up. I'd done normal things like got a shave, clean my teeth, got a shower. Had a little bit of breakfast, a cup of tea, just these normal things. I think I managed to go out in my car because that was another thing. I love to drive. That's my escapism. And I was getting really afraid and panicky about driving. So I went out and had a drive, and things started to pick up. Now, today I just want to talk about the things that really helped me get some quality of life back. Right, and first of all, I think it was movement. Okay, if I got up of a morning and I sat in the chair, I felt totally and utterly fatigued. Then the depression would come in, and I would wonder what life was all about again. It was an existence. It wasn't living. So movement really helped me. I started to go out. I started to do walks. I started to go swimming again. And when I was doing these pursuits, when I was doing these things, I forgot about the fatigue. I'm not saying the fatigue went, but I forgot about it. And for them few hours that I was doing things, that I was moving, even round the house, if I was moving, doing stuff round the house, I was forgetting about the fatigue. I didn't feel as much fatigue. And I know there is physiological and biological reasons for fatigue being relieved somewhat when we move. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know there's biological and physiological reasons that when we move, it can combat fatigue. So this really started to help me. I started to sort of get up of a morning. I still had some depression and some anxiety of a morning, and I still do today, being honest with you, but I can manage it much easier. So first and foremost, it was about moving, getting out, exercising. When I got up of a morning, I didn't feel like going out. Today I can still feel like that. I can still feel quite fatigued of a morning, but I know once I get out there and start doing things, that fatigue is going to lift somewhat. So first of all, movement, exercise, get out there, do things that you want to do, and see how much you forget about your fatigue until you come back home and you sit in the chair. And then your fatigue will come back, but that's all right, because you're not just existing, you're starting to live again. I live in North Wales. I have beautiful walks in the country, drives out into Snowdonia, seeing the waterfalls, all these inspirational things, just getting out into the cafes again, watching people, trying to help people where I could, because that takes the emphasis off me, deflect the concentration on myself, and maybe try and help other people, invest in other people, so that, you're not thinking about yourself all the time as well. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean, thinking about yourself, your fatigue, it's hard to break out of that vicious cycle, as they call it in cognitive behavioral therapy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, they say thoughts lead to feelings, and feelings drives actions, and actions lead to consequences, and the culmination of all the consequences in life deems your quality of life. Well, when your thoughts are bad, when your thoughts are depressive, then the feelings that go with it are also, of feeling down and sluggish and hopeless and whatever. And that leads to inertia in a lot of cases. We don't move, and the consequences of that is that we're not changing anything. Therefore, things are going to remain the same. So I had to push through. Once I got that glimmer of hope back, I started pushing through each day. I started to swim 50, 60, 70 lengths of the swimming pool, go and have a sauna. And this was despite having the fatigue in the morning. Bear that in mind. Don't let fatigue in the morning stop you doing these things. Go out and do them. I think the other thing as well was with the anxiety, mindfulness, living just for the day, maybe just for the hour, or just for the moment as much as possible. When I found my mind wandering forward, thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I've got to get to the doctors. I've got to get to the hospital. I'm full of anxiety. That's happening in 2 weeks' time. And then I would find myself getting very, very anxious, and that would lead to more depression. And then I started living in a day. What can I do today to live, to live my best life? I said just recently, I know we've got this coping with cancer community, and please come and visit us on Facebook. Just look up the coping with cancer community. My name's Paul Henderson. Please look, and please come and join us on there, because there's lots of things I'd like to do with you people, is meet you people, maybe over Zoom, or maybe on the coping with cancer community, and the strength in togetherness. And one of the things I said recently is that I'm not going to let cancer define me. I'm going to let it challenge me to find ways of living my best life. Okay. And that's what I do. So the mindfulness, the meditation, that come in. Just concentrate on what I'm doing at the moment. When my mind started to move into the future, I drew it back and concentrated on the now. When it started going backwards, thinking, I can't do all of them things, or I find it difficult to do all of them things I used to do, and that was grief of a loss of identity, if you like. Then I would bring myself back to the present moment. Okay, which brings me to the last subject really of today. What is it that has really infuse life back into me? Because really there wasn't any. I'm going to be very, very honest with you today. It was so difficult psychologically with the fatigue, to fight anything, being so fatigued. And a lot of this is chemically induced, which makes it even more difficult at times. But there is a way. There is a way, and I'm finding that way. I find today I don't have the big highs I used to have, but I also don't have the lows that I used to have. Them deep lows, them very dark places that I've been to going back a few months ago. But the most important thing to me was to induce meaning back into life, because I'd lost the meaning of life. A trained therapist, and I had to let that go because I couldn't commit to 2-year courses. And all the things that I sort of identified with that constructed my sense of self, Paul, this is who I am, was slowly going. And meaning had gone from my life. I didn't see any points in my life. And again, I'm never like that. But that's where it took me. This is where this journey took me. So I had to infuse meaning back into my life. So what I started doing, I'm a therapist. I train therapists for a living. I started doing these, I started the Coping for Cancer community on Facebook, and that's in its infancy at the moment. I started doing these videos to try and connect with you people out there and so that we converse, whether it be over social media or wherever it be, that we can come together. So that started giving my life meaning. The very thing that was dragging me down, the cancer, the illness, started to give my life meaning, because I had experience in that. I also have a lot of experience in teaching psychology, and I know many skills and methods, to combat different things in psychology. So I started to utilize all these and put them down on this Facebook page for people hopefully to read, and for people to so it helps people to move on, to move through this dark period. But please put in the comments below if you are suffering from that deep fatigue and that depression that comes with cancer. Please put it in the comments below. Reach out, let's talk to each other. Another thing, I'm in North Wales, and I'd just like to say another thing is that my hospital's the Glenclwyd Hospital, up by Rydlan in North Wales, and they're just opening a Maggie's Centre. And for anybody who doesn't know what a Maggie's Centre is, apparently it's a centre where people with cancer and their families can drop in. They can call in any time. I do believe they have some professionals at hand if you need to talk to professionals, but more to the point, we can talk to other people just like ourselves, and then that will free us of the isolation. So that's another thing I was finding. I didn't want to connect with people when I was going through that depression, and I forced myself to in the end, because I'm a social animal, really. I'm a social being. I do like my quiet times. I do like to have my times of deep quietness, and I do quite a lot of things alone. I enjoy that, but I am social, and it was very important to reconnect with people, to be very honest, not to try and live up to people's expectations when they say things like, you've got this. We haven't got it. We're all inside. We all have these worries. We all have these fears, and we need to express them. As a therapist, I know that if we don't express our fears and our worries, what we do is repress them. So the idea is to express, not repress. And repress means that our mind stuff things down, things that bother us. Our mind automatically stuffs them down deep into our unconscious mind, so that they're out of sight, so to speak. The mind's a wonderful thing. It does this because it wants to protect us. But really, it doesn't protect us, because what happens when we repress information like that and we stuff it deep down into our unconscious mind? It's not dead and buried, it's buried alive. Okay? And as an energy, because emotion and thought is all energy, it must find it's neither created or destroyed energy. It must find a way of expression. So when we repress worries and frustrations and all of these things, it generally comes back at us and finds expression in things like, especially depression, anxiety, addiction. All of these things are waiting for us if we stuff our fears down. So the other thing I'm saying today is express your fears, talk about them. I know sometimes it's difficult to talk to family members, close family members, because you don't want to worry them. I have that, and if that's the case, I know I can talk to them, but I don't want to. So find like-minded people, where you can see them face to face or over Zoom, and you can express, because what we do when we express, our fears and our worries, we process them and they will dissipate. So I think I'll stop there for today. Please put your comments, connect with me. Let's get the ball rolling here. Let's get some connection, and let's start discussing our fears and our worries, and together we're strong. Thank you. Speak soon.